Okay, it's 3 o'clock. If everyone would please stand, and if Miss Debbie would lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, this is the Planning and Zoning Board / local planning agency. It's an advisory board which makes recommendations to the county commissioners, and the county commissioners will be making the final decision on all these items. Items H9, H11, H12, and H13 are LPA items. Items on today's agenda will be heard by the county commission on July 17th, 2025 at 5 p.m. When a motion ends in any kind of a split vote, a roll call vote may be taken to ensure accuracy. As a reminder, each member who makes a motion or a second needs to turn their microphone on so that your voice is on record. Speakers for public comment and agenda items will be given 3 minutes. At this time, if any board member has had any ex parte communication regarding any application, please disclose so now. All right, seeing that, I bring it back to the board. We need a motion for the approval of the P&Z minutes from April 14th.
Move for approval.
Second.
Got a motion by Debbie, a second by Erica. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? That passed unanimously. And we will be moving item H13. It will be following item H10. All right, item H1, please.
Item H1 is Aubri Lucille Williamson, request a change of zoning classification from RU-1-9 to RU-2-10 under application 24Z00052, located in District 5.
Okay, sir, and are you the applicant?
Good afternoon. My name is Nathan Malone. I represent the applicant. I'm an attorney.
All right. Go ahead and tell us a little bit about what you're wanting to do there, please.
So we recently came before the Board of Adjustment where they approved some variances to the RU-2-10. My client, as she'll explain, just got married and is looking to kind of have this house as an investment property. She has a current contract for somebody starting in July to be there for 1 year. And in order to just kind of make it more in conformity with the area, to the north, there's a big block of RU-210. Directly to the right or to the east is some RU-212. So in order to kind of keep the conformity with the area, we're seeking a zoning change to RU-2-10. It's compatible. It's consistent with the area, and it's in line with what else is in that area. This is right outside the shopping center with the Long Doggers in Indy Atlantic, just south of where the Health First is and the Dunkin' Donuts is in Indy Atlantic. It's kind of the weird enclave where you have the portions of the county and then Indy Atlantic right over by the beach. And we're asking the board to approve the zoning request and make it more compatible and consistent with what's in the area.
All right. Well, sir, while you're right there, is there anyone in the audience want to speak for or against this item? Sir, if you and your applicant could grab a seat. Ma'am, if you could get as close as you can to the microphone and state your name and address for the record.
So my name is Sandra Sullivan. I'm from South Patrick Shores. So I have a friend that was on the street, and there have been 2 rezoning requests on Franklin Avenue. One of them is next to Clefledge, and they had requested to have 2 duplex at the front and the back of the property, 0.26 of an acre. And it ended up by the county commissioner being a split vote, and it failed. They had the BDP that was proposed was two duplexes, front and back off of Grosse Pointe, because there's a lot of traffic issues there. And the second, no short-term rental was specified, and no more than 1 story. You mentioned in the item that there is a property 200 feet to the east That property is under a BDP, again, no short-term rentals. By the county, this is an area of no short-term rentals. So a BDP that they could put in, again, a duplex, but no short-term rentals, an existing BDP on that property. This property is already, so unlike those other two lots, which are 0.26 of an acre, they go from Franklin all the way over to Grosse Pointe, this property's already been split. So if you were to be consistent with the surrounding area, the maximum would be to allow a duplex on the property. Now, I do want to point out regarding the short-term rental aspect, you do realize, and it's missing from the map that was made by staff, which is a major red flag from my perspective. There is Hoover Elementary School, literally a house away from this particular property. Now, I don't know about you, but as a parent of elementary school kids, I wouldn't be happy to have a short-term rental, which is inconsistent with this area. And I would beg the question, why did this go to the Board of Adjustments for a short-term rental for a zoning that they don't have yet? So that's a huge red flag as well. So so my comment is this is inconsistent for the BDPs that are in this area. And like I said, the Clefledge property was denied by the county, a 2-2 vote. But that also had stipulated no short-term rentals. Thank you. So
thank you.
Vote no.
Is there anyone else would like to speak for or against this item? All right, seeing that, I'm going to close it for public comment. Sir, if you could come back up. And you hear the issues there that the surrounding properties are having. Even I see now on the west, is that the west side of that? It's zoned RU12?
Pull up the map and make sure I'm looking at the same thing. There's to the east is RU212, to the north is RU210. To the south, it looks like a multifamily zoning in Indialantic. And then there's some more RU1-11 further to the south. But then there's a commercial property with a strip plaza and the Publix, the Long Doggers, the
Right.
kind of a multitude of stores. I also, the former rezoning was an open lot. The property is a one-story. There's currently a building on site. So it's not where there will be a new building. My client is willing to keep this as a single family and not have it be a duplex. That is not her intention. And like was stated, there's a 1-year lease that is in place that begins in July for the property. So its intended use is for long-term rental use as a rental property for long-term use. It's obviously as a owner, she has a vested interest in keeping the area nice and not having
Right.
bad things happen in the area.
Okay. Does anybody on the board have any questions for the applicant?
You gonna do a BDP on that?
I think we're willing to have a BDP that it'll remain a single family.
Are you willing to do a BDP that there's no short-term rentals? See, I'm very familiar with that area, and we keep talking about Long Doggers, and we talk about Publix, but what's at the end of that street, right there at that address, is Hoover Elementary School, as was mentioned, and also, Busy Bears Daycare, which is right across, which is right there too. So I would just suggest that we say absolutely no short-term rentals. I don't think it should be zoned as such.
Yeah. So we're not willing to do
So
that because we don't want to give away one of those bundles of sticks that my client would have as a property owner and have that go away forever. Who knows what the world will look like in 50, 75, 100 years and have that on there and potentially restrict that. The school could be there, the school could not be there, the daycare could be there, could not be there. Again, while it's across the street, it's an equal distance away from these commercial establishments.
That's true.
It's 5 or 6 blocks down from zone NC. There's the CC, and then there's the Indialantic. It's just as easy to get from there to the daycare or to the school as it would be from my client's property. And while I realize that there's bad things that happen in the world and there's bad people in the world, we can't sit here and think, oh, well, what if somebody rents that? Well, there's hotels, and I'm sure if somebody had bad motives, they could stay at one of the hotels that's a quarter mile up the street and come down and look and do whatever they wanted to do to the school or to the daycare. And God forbid that would be a horrible thing to happen. But that wouldn't be a reason for taking one of the bundles of sticks that my client has as a property owner in the area.
I understand that, but I do have friends that live there, and they live in the condos on the south side, and they're saying right now, as it exists today, there's just way too much traffic, and people are speeding by, and there's kids on that street, and that Hoover Elementary School has been there for 50 years, and I think it's probably going to be there another 50 years. So I really have a hard time approving this, especially with no BDP. It'd just be impossible for me to say in my good graces. I mean, the daycare may go out of business, but as it is today, I mean, that's my thoughts on it. I've stood there in front of my friend's house and almost been run over. I just don't think we need to add to the problems that already exist on that street.
Any other comments from the board? Mr. John?
I tend to agree. Without a BDP for short-term rental restriction, this won't fly.
I would concur with that.
Who said that? I'm sorry. Ms. Ruth. Okay. Any other comments from the board? Are you willing to do a BDP on that?
Yes, we're willing to do a BDP on no short-term rentals.
So the BDP would be on, because the previous BDP that was put on for the other property said, developer agrees not to use property for resort dwelling purposes and therefore such use prohibited. Also, shall limit density to 2 units constructed as a duplex, maybe it's already constructed, restricted by any changes to the comprehensive plan or land development regulations. And finally, the developer shall limit ingress and egress to 1 unit on Franklin and 1 on Grosse Point. So I don't know if that's
I think what we'd be willing to do, and obviously we're open for input on this, but to have no resort dwellings and then to keep it with 1 unit on the property.
And you already have the 1 unit, correct?
Correct. The 1 unit is already in existence there.
How many bedrooms is that unit?
It's a 3-2.
So we're not talking a whole lot anyway.
But no short-term rentals.
Correct. It would be no resort dwellings and keep it as the single-family 1 unit. So we wouldn't be turning it
Single story as well.
single story as well.
I mean, in keeping with the character of the street.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Ms. Erica, I'll need a motion then.
Okay, well, I will make a motion that we pass this with the following binding development plan put in place that states that it's going to have no short-term rentals, single story, what else do we say? No resort use, and single residence. Thank you very much.
I'll second that.
Okay, we got a motion by Erica, a second by John. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That passed unanimously.
Thank you.
Okay, item H2.
Quentin Bessent Jr. requests a change of zoning classification from AU to RU-1-11 under application 25Z00006, located in District 1.
Ms. Trina, I've got an issue with this timer. Does anyone know how I get power to this?
So Logan from SCG TV just spoke down. He'll be down in a second, it sounded like.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sir, are you the applicant?
Yes, sir, I am.
If you could state your name and address for the record, please.
Quentin Bessent,
1015 Lundy Drive.
And a little bit about what you're wanting to do, Mr. Quentin.
I would just like a single resident home and for single zone.
All right, while you're right there, hold on 1 second. Does anyone in the audience want to speak for or against this item? All right, seeing that, I'm going to close it to the floor for public comment. Do we have any questions, board, for Mr. Quentin? John, I know you got something to say. Come on.
Is there sewer on that property? Sanitary sewer?
Not that I'm aware of.
I didn't see it. Not that you're aware of?
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
So you're going to go on septic?
Yes, sir.
Okay, 2.8 acres, right?
2.9.
2.9. Usually a third of an acre is what they use
Use for that.
as a cutoff,
Okay.
but you're close. Okay. That's all I got, Mr. Chair.
Any other questions from the board for the applicant? I need a motion.
Second.
Got a motion by Deb, a second by Ruth. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passed unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Have a good day. Item H3, please.
Item H3 is Thomas Daugherty, requests a change of zoning classification from GU to RU-1-11 under application 25Z 00007, located in District 1. And Chair, if I may, before you begin, the staff report is has some inaccuracies in it. Mr. Daugherty actually produced a deed from 1952 that has this property in the same configuration that it is now. So we'll do an addendum for the board, but just want to clear that up.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Trina. Sir, could you state your name and address for the record, please?
Thomas Daugherty, 4970 Curtis Boulevard, Cocoa.
And a little bit about what you're wanting to do.
I just want to put a single-family home there. I know it's on the corner of Dunbar, and
Right.
they just put 4 houses on Dunbar on smaller lots than mine, so I didn't think it would be an issue.
All right. While you're right there, hold on 1 second. Anyone in the audience want to speak for or against this item? I'm going to close it for public comment, then I bring it back to the board. We got any questions for the applicant? Mr. Ron, you're not saying much.
No, I don't have any questions. Thank you.
I guess I have another question. Okay, so since it fits the zoning requirements of RU 1-9 and RU 1-11, why are you asking for RU 1-9, RU 1-7? Why are you asking for RU 1-11?
I believe it's GU now, so you would need 5 acres to build on it. So I don't really have a choice if I want the setbacks.
It says the subject property would also meet the lot size, width, depth requirements of RU 1-9 and RU 1-7.
I believe what the 11 is, you can build a larger home, right? Right, but I can always go down, because I didn't go out and get building plans until I get it approved.
The only thing that I see is that this approval would be the introduction of a new zoning classification to this area. So that's just for consistency, since it would already fit on, the other 2 zoning models. And that may be a question for staff. Are we moving to our U1-11, or, if it can fit on a, lesser zoning criterion, should we go with that?
So as you stated, in the area, there is RU-19 and RU-17, I believe, already established. I think there may have been some confusion that with the RU 111, that requires 1,100 square foot house, that he could build smaller than that. And so I explained at the North Merritt Island meeting that, or the Port St. John meeting, that that's the minimum house size. So he has to build 1,100 square feet. But the RU19 obviously would allow for 900 square feet minimum, and RU17, 700 square feet minimum. So it's just, I think, up to him about what size house he ultimately wants to build and pick the appropriate zoning to fit that. But with those other ones, you can go up, you know, if you have 700 or 900, you can still build larger than that, but that's just a minimum.
I would prefer 11, but I mean, if I had to go smaller, I would.
I'm just saying, in keeping with the characteristic,
Okay.
you know, in keeping with concurrency with the area, it would fall into RU1-9 or RU1-7.
I mean,
Sir, I think you're misunderstanding. You don't have to build, that doesn't let you build a bigger house, but the other ones let you build a smaller house. With RU111, the smallest house you can build is 1,100 square feet. With the 7, it's 700 square feet. With the 9, it's 900 square feet. You can go up as far as long as it'll fit on your property with your setbacks. You can fill that up. That. Sure, yeah.
Thank you for explaining that. Motion to approve item H3 with an RU1-9 zoning classification.
Second.
Motion by Erica, a second by Rob. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passed unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Item H4.
Item H4, Forbes Remodeling and Construction LLC, being represented by Chester Forbes, requests a zoning classification change from AU to RU-1-13 under application 25Z00009, located in District 5.
Is the applicant here? Forbes Contracting or Forbes Remodeling and Construction, are you here? Okay. Well, seeing that, I bring it back to the board.
Mr. Chairman, move to table.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion from John, a second by Ruth to table item H4. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That item's been tabled. Item H5.
John A. and Christine S. Conley, being represented by Ken Ludwa and/or Savannah Farley, requested zoning classification change from BU2 to RU-1-11 under application 25Z00010, located in District 2.
Okay, and hello, Mrs. Farley.
Hello. My name is Savannah Farley. I'm with BSE Consultants representing the owner. We're looking to rezone this property from BU2 to RU1-11. The owner wishes to build a single-family residence. The current zoning of BU2 is actually not allowed under the existing future land use designation. So by rezoning this property, we'd bring it into compliance with that land use designation.
All right, while you're right there, does anyone in the audience want to speak for or against this item? This is an easy one. See here? You're rolling right along. Seeing that, I bring it back to the board. Help her out, Henry.
Unfortunately, I know it too well. Is this the last of the Jern piece? Didn't Jern own that whole, all the pieces down to 24 marker?
I don't know. So I'm going to let you know that our office is obviously representing that. Savannah's did a great job, by the way.
Oh,
I'll recuse myself from voting on this. We took this project before I was asked to be on the board, but I don't believe so. But it is the property, it's the parking lot piece just north of Market 24.
Okay, it's
Is what's
part
there
on
right
the,
now.
on the east side?
The north side.
Yeah, but the east side of South Banana.
Yes, sir.
Okay. It's good. There's a lot of history down there. You're just an attorney, I guess, or whatever. I'm good.
What's to the north? What's that, another BU2 right to the north of it? Henry, you know?
There's more houses there.
There's residentials.
There's residential there,
Yeah,
so.
2 residentials and.
But it's still BU2.
It is BU2, and so what's happening is, as folks come in for building permits, they're having to go through the rezoning process to align
Yeah.
the zoning with the underlying land use.
I'm sorry, I didn't get it.
So there's homes along that side, and what's happening is if folks come in for building permits, putting on a porch, remodeling, that sort of thing, they're having to correct their zoning to become, to get into alignment with the underlying land use.
So there won't be any more BU2 than that?
Eventually, there'll be no more BU2.
Oh, yeah. That would-
There's still a few to the north, but one at a
Right.
time, they're being taken down.
Okay, all right.
That used to be where everybody lived in a trailer. Those days are gone. Yeah.
Are we good, board? Because I got a motion by Debbie. I'm going to pick up on that. I need a second.
I'll second it.
Okay, item H5, I got a motion by Debbie, a second by Rob. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passed unanimously.
Thank you.
Good luck with the county commissioners. Item H6.
Item H6, Stephen Schulze Jr. requests a zoning classification change from AU to RU-1-13 under application 25Z00011, located in District 5.
Sir, if you could state your name and address for the record.
Stephen Schulze, 275 Gray Road, Melbourne.
Can you get a little closer to the
Sure.
microphone there?
Stephen Schulze, 275 Gray Road, Melbourne.
And a little bit about what you want to do, Mr. Stevens.
I was trying to just do an addition on my house, and Mr. Body told me that I need to rezone. It wasn't zoned properly from the last time they subdivided it, before I owned the property.
Okay, while you're right there, let me see. Is anyone in the audience want to speak for or against this item? All right, I'm closing it for public comment. I'm bringing it back to the board. Do we have any questions for Mr. Stephen?
Move to approve.
Second.
I got a motion by John, a second by Erica on item H5. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I said that wrong. It's item H6. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passed unanimously.
All right, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Have a good day.
You too.
Item H7, please.
Eduardo Bertot and Brett Bertot request a zoning classification change from BU1 and RU-2-10 to all RU-2-10 under application 25Z00012, located in District 1.
Sir, could you state your name and address for the record?
It's Brett Bertot, 2680 Sugar Pine Run.
And a little bit about what you're wanting to do, sir.
I'd like to add additional units to the property if I can, and I was told it needed to be rezoned because it has two different zoning classifications. It's my understanding that one of the zoning classifications would allow for it, but the other would not. So I'm looking to combine to the zoning classification that would allow me to do so.
All right, and how many units you looking to add?
I was told I can go up to 3, and if I can, great. If I can't, minimum 1, maximum 3. So.
All right, while you're right there, if you could stand by. Anyone in the audience want to speak for or against this item? All right, seeing that, I bring it back to the board. Do we have any questions for the applicant? I need a motion. motion?
I second.
Got a motion from Debbie, a second by Erica on item H7. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passed unanimously.
Thank you.
Good luck with the county commissioners. Item H8, Ms. Trina.
Item H8, Emerald Plaza Development Incorporated, represented by Louis Riposta, request a CUP, conditional use permit for alcoholic beverages on premises consumption, accessory to a cigar bar in units 1 through 5 under application 25Z 00014, located in District 2.
Okay, is the applicant here? If you could come up and get as close as you can to the microphone. And sir, if you'd state your name and address for the record.
Louis Riposta, the address of the business, 925 North Courtney Parkway, Merritt Island.
And a little bit about what you're wanting to do.
Well, we've been in business 4.5 years, built a good quality business. We currently have beer and wine. In the past year and a half, there's been 3 other cigar bars that have opened in the county within 15 miles of me, and basically it's eroded a little bit of my business. It was always my plan to get liquor when I could afford it, and now's the time to try and protect our position in the county as the top cigar bar that people want to go to, but they want that liquor. So it's going to help me to maintain number 1.
All right, while you're right there, does anyone in the audience want to speak for or against this item? All right, closing it for public comment. I'll bring it back to the board. Do we have any questions for applicant?
This gentleman's the only guy that doesn't have a CUP in Merritt Island for liquor.
Well, I'm waiting on a motion.
He's entitled. Everybody on North Tropical Trail, or North Courtney has one, so this gentleman certainly deserves it, so I'm gonna make a motion.
You're going to make a motion to approve?
Oh, yes, sir.
Well, we already have a motion now in a second.
I just wanted, how close are you to the high school?
Footage-wise, I couldn't tell you.
800 feet.
It's down the road beyond. You got to get in the car to get there. It's not across the street. Arby's is across the street. The abandoned car wash is across the street.
I just got sold.
Yeah, I saw the sign actually. Yeah.
Okay. So you're not close to the school, so the students can go and partake?
No. They even solicit us for donations, and we're like, why? You know, we do have a coffee bar with great milkshakes and stuff, but that's not who we do. We're cigars.
I have a question. Right here. How does it work with it being within the 300 feet of a church?
That's why I'm here. I don't know how to explain it in a short form. When I was granted the business license with the beer and wine for almost 5 years ago, the ministry was there. They're open 4 hours a week on Sunday from 10 in the morning to 2 in the afternoon. I had to pay the surveyor here recently $1,500 to affirm the distance between the schools and the churches. He didn't even know it was there. It's so nondescript. So that being said, that's why we're going for, I guess, as the notice in my front yard is a variance in understanding that I'm applying for this application.
Can I ask staff?
Yes, so let me add something to that. So at the MIRA meeting, the board of directors reviewed this proposal. They approved it 7-1. Their recommendation is that the CUP will no longer be in effect should the space be leased to another tenant, or if the use of the property is modified. So MIRA understood the situation with the church. I believe the church maybe moved in afterward, I think.
The way in my research, they came in 2011, and it's changed hands once or twice since then.
Right.
And it was much more active back in the day, but now there's tumbleweeds in front of the door.
So the reason why we're submitting this application is for the board to make a determination of whether or not it should be approved, knowing that there is a church that's in the same plaza.
May I add something? There's a marijuana dispensary next to the church with a marijuana doctor, marijuana dispensary. You know, we're all trying to get along, but that's the reality.
All right, any more comment from the board?
Just one more. Did they need a cup for the beer and wine?
This gentleman here?
No, and well, yeah, for that. For
Well,
the
he
beer and
has
wine,
a-
did he have to have a CUP for that?
You do, yes.
You do. So this will be their second CUP.
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
So-
Any other questions? Go ahead.
I was just going to say, because he's expanding the use, beer and wine, to full alcohol, that's why he has to apply for another CUP.
Yeah, understood that. I was just curious if there was an original CUP for the beer and wine.
Yes.
So there was.
Is that
Was there
a-
any objection? Hang on a second.
Is that a 4 COP license?
Yes, it's full. It's quota license. I had sold my house to get the money put down on it.
I was going to say, was that the down payment?
No, I put a good amount down, and yeah.
Any other questions from board? I've got a motion from Henry to approve item H8.
I'll second it.
I already have a second here from Debbie. But all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed.
We have one opposed, but it did pass.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. Good luck with the county commissioners.
Thank you.
Item H9, which is an LPA item.
CTX Equities Incorporated, custom-built contracting, request a small-scale comprehensive plan amendment under 25S.09 to change the future land use designation from NC and CC to all NC under application 25SS00003, located in District 1. Also, I'm going to read in item H10 because they're companion applications, but we'll need a separate recommendation. So again, CTX Equities Incorporated requests a change of zoning classification from GU and BU2 to all BU2 under application 25Z00013, located in District 1.
Sir, are you the applicant?
He's the applicant, I'm the representative
All right.
from the construction company for a project.
If you could state your name and address for the record.
My name is James Graham, and the address for the business or for this address?
For business.
250 South Courtney Parkway, Merritt Island.
All right, and a little bit about what you're wanting to do.
We're looking to build a 12,000 square foot building, metal building, to do work on tractor trailers.
All right. While you're there, is there anyone in the audience want to speak for or against this item? Closing it for public comment. Seeing that, I bring it back to the board. We have any questions for the applicant?
I've got one. You gonna do any welding on that site?
So, I can, if you want to, I just have a fresh, I finally got it from the survey, the wetland has been.
He asked about welding, is that what you said?
Oh,
Very little.
Oh, I'm sorry.
They will be doing welding?
Very little, yes.
Okay. Which is okay under BU2, right? Unless he puts a BDP on it.
Yes.
But you're just doing the trailers, not the,
Not the tractors, no.
okay. You doing any chemical washing or anything?
No, just basically body panel repairs
Mm-hmm.
on semi-trailers. No paint?
No paint?
Nope.
Basically drilling out rivets and putting new panels on and re-riveting them inside and out back together again, refreshing them.
Signage?
Oh, yeah, vinyl decals and stuff like that, but that's
Okay,
it.
but no paint?
No paint.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions from board? I need a motion, please.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Got a motion by Ruth, a second by Rob. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item H9 passed unanimously. Now we need a motion on item H10.
Make a motion to approve.
Item H10, a motion by Rob, a second by Debbie. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that passed unanimously.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. Okay, now we're going to move up item
H13.
H13, please.
Recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners regarding amendment to Chapter 52, Article 7, Division 2, Section 62-2844, entitled Performance Security, to allow the Public Works Director to release or reduce performance security as appropriate for the construction of improvements associated with subdivision and plats upon issuance of a certificate of completion.
All right, does someone want to give us a little bit about what's happening there?
Good afternoon. Rachel Dorena, Public Works Engineering. So this was identified under, can you hear me?
There we go.
Okay. Normally I talk too loud. This was identified under a staff efficiency review. Originally, it subsequently went to the board for legislative intent, but we're just looking for a recommendation. Right now, when we have a performance bond, we issue a certificate of completion. It has to go back to the Board of County Commissioners before release. It's really pretty administrative. They never get commented on. So this would be allowing the delegation of the administrative release of the bonds to be at the Director of Public Works level.
All right. Is there anyone in the audience want to speak for or against this item? So seeing that, I'll close it for public comment, bring it back to the board. Do we have any questions for staff?
I do.
Ms. Ruth?
So in the current process, how many times to release it does it go before the board?
It only goes one time, but by that time, the certificate of completion has already been given. And so this just adds additional time before developers can get their performance security released.
And how much time does that add?
Usually about a month and a half, depending on when the board meets.
Mr. Chairman?
Hold on one second. Ms. Ruth still got the floor. Are you good?
I'm thinking, go ahead.
All right. Mr. John? Yes, sir.
Is this after all the punch items are done, or is it just at the certificate of completion?
The certificate of completion is not issued until all punch list items have been addressed and as-built have been received. So there are no items
After that,
remaining.
you want to release the bond?
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
All right. So it'll save you time, essentially, in bureaucracy, in getting that released?
Yeah, it saves staff time as well as just allowing people to get their performance bonds securities back in a more timely manner.
The contract.
Yeah, no, I understand. Okay.
And, sorry.
No, that's all right. Hold on. Yes, Ms. Ruth, go ahead.
I'm just curious, because I'm not generally in favor of taking things away from the Board of County Commissioners. Does it not benefit them in any way to see this coming before them?
I mean, it's not, I would say that's kind of neutral. I guess it's an FYI if they're interested. We've just never had any interest from the board really in these items. It's really just one more step in the process.
So did the county commission act as oversight?
The county commission has really never taken any action in terms of the actual certificate of completion issuances.
But they could if it was before them?
By the time these go before them, the certificate of completion's already issued.
But the money's not released.
As a contractor, I applaud any efforts to streamline the ponderous amount of paperwork that builders and contractors and people in the construction industry have to go through. I greatly applaud that. Taking out any unnecessary step is a great thing in my eyes.
Ms. Karina, could you maybe mention about the maintenance bond component of it too, that is part of the projects that come in after performance bonds do? Just to give that
Sure.
level of assurance maybe to the board.
Yeah, so when a project has a public component that is going to be publicly maintained, so if it's a public street, public sidewalk, anything like that, before the performance bond is ever released, a 2-year maintenance bond is put in place, and then goes back through a final inspection process at the end of 2 years to make sure that it's still in good condition and that there were no workmanship issues that weren't identified at the time of acceptance. So there's another 2 years on those types of things for maintenance bond purposes. But I mean, as far as the performance, the code kind of already identifies what's needed to be complete. And it's a pretty extensive process in terms of the as-builts that are required and the punch lists that get formulated from all the different departments at final completion and those inspections. And no certificate of completion is ever issued prior to all of that being complete. This is really an administrative process, it going back to the board for release. And so it was identified as a efficiency review.
Mr. Chair, in the ordinance, you're stating a release or a reduction. Okay, so, what you've been stating is a complete release. But
So
you're
the-
giving it to the discretion of the Public Works Director, correct?
So the ordinance does have the ability to do a bond reduction, but in the way that ordinance is written currently in the code, that requires that type item of work to be complete and acceptable at that time. So sometimes you'll have where the whole utility system is complete and acceptable, but as a whole, it's never a partial, oh, you put 10 feet of pipe in the ground, we're going to release that much. So that is contemplated as also being an administrative release, but it would have to go through that same process. So for those items that are complete, they would have to be as-builted, they would have to be final inspected, and then you could get that partial release of security for just those sections that are complete.
So then the project could be phased?
The project could be
get released
phased.
as a phase is completed?
Yes.
Okay. That helps. Thank you.
Ms. Ruth? Any other questions from board to staff? I need a motion.
I'd like to make a motion for approval.
Okay, we have a motion by Anna, a second by Debbie on item H13. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item
Nay.
H13 passed unanimously.
No, she
I
said nay.
opposed.
Mark.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Okay, Ruth opposed. Did we get that? Okay. Item H11.
Mr. Chair, may I please ask for a 5-minute recess?
Yes, thank you. I need to so myself. Order. And we're going to move on with item H11.
Item H11, staff is seeking a recommendation for adoption of a large-scale comprehensive plan amendment under application number 24 LS 00001 regarding the Brevard Barrier Island Area, BBIA, as a new element to the comprehensive plan under the state coordinated review process.
And seeing this staff, somebody has been doing their homework.
Yes.
Very hard. Great job on this.
Can we bring up the presentation, please? Before you have discussions, we just have a small presentation for each
Good.
one. So we'll start with the BBIA one first. And I wanted to point out, as you go through these slides, these pictures that you'll see was done by a local artist. Her name is Ludwa Sims. She's given us permission to use her photography in our slides. Okay, so the first one, can you go back? Should be go forward. They don't have the updated slides. Okay, well, there's a, go to the other one, and we'll use the slide in the other one. Pull up the other one, please. Sorry for the technical difficulties here. Is it on there, the ear one? Yeah, but it's missing this one, the ear process slide. Logan, can you pull up the ear presentation also? I'm going to use the slide 2 from the, okay. There we go. And we can just go to slide 2. Thank you so much. Nope, slide 2. Yes. Thank you. So we're going to start out with a brief history and explanation of the comp plan and the EAR process. So the 1988 comprehensive plan, it outlines the long-range vision for growth, conservation, and development. It serves as a guiding policy document. The land development regulations are the primary implementation tools used to carry out the goals, objectives, and policies established in the comprehensive plan. So the Evaluation and Appraisal, which is called the EAR, it's a statutorily required review that Brevard County must conduct at least every 7 years to determine whether or not amendments to the comprehensive plan are necessary to maintain consistency with the changes in Chapter 163 Florida statutes. So the EAR process has 5 steps. The first step is evaluation of the comprehensive plan to determine if updates are needed due to statutory changes. Second step is notification, submitting a letter to Florida Department of Florida Commerce stating that amendments are necessary. The third step is the transmittal. Amendments are prepared and then they're transmitted to Florida Commerce within 1 year of the notification. The county's transmittal was required to be received by Florida Commerce by December 1st, 2024, and that's pursuant to subsection 163.31912 of the Florida statutes. The request to transmit was approved by the Board of County Commissioners on November 7th, 2024. So Brevard County received from Florida Commerce or I should say Florida Commerce issued a ORC report. It's called Objections, Recommendations, and Comments. They issued that to us on January 21st, 2025. So at that time, the county continued to collaborate with Florida Commerce and other state agencies and stakeholders to resolve the objections. Objections are things that are required to be resolved before it moves forward to adoption. Additionally, we incorporated many of the recommendations and comments into the comprehensive plan that was also provided by Florida Commerce, as well as some stakeholders and other state agencies. So Brevard County did request an extension to the adoption of the EAR based on the amendments and the BBIA element. We wanted to ensure accuracy and continuity of the plan. So this extended our response time to September 17th, 2025. We requested the extension because, as I stated, we were collaborating with so many different state agencies and stakeholders and residents that we wanted to make sure we got it right before we presented it to you. The next thing I want to point out is that in the documents that you received, the blue underline are additions, and the red strike through are deletions. Those represent the changes since transmittal. Any text that is in black underline and black strike through represents changes that were already transmitted and effectively accepted by Florida Commerce, meaning we didn't have to do anything to those. I also want to point out that if the board issues a directive to make any changes beyond what has effectively been accepted by Florida Commerce, it may be considered a substantial change. And if so, Florida Commerce may determine that our comprehensive plan is out of compliance. So after the adoption of the comprehensive plan, the county is required to update the land development regulations within 12 months. Those land development regulations is what's going to implement what we put into the comprehensive plan. So Florida Commerce also has to review those land development regulations as well. We have to submit to them. And so, I want to start by saying, this is not the end all. This is just the beginning of a long process. Can you switch the slides? Go back to the BBIA one, please.
Can I ask a question? You said this is a long process. How many times are we going to review this? Because I think this is our second look on the comprehensive plan.
After it's adopted, then we'll be working on updating the land development regulations, and that will take hopefully less than a year, but it will be a long process, more so for staff and other collaborating agencies and stakeholders.
Okay. That's just under the BBIA?
Both.
Or under both?
Under both,
All right.
yes.
Thank you.
If I could just add one thing, the BBIA is a never-ending thing. So when we're talking to Florida Commerce, they're going to expect continuous changes in perpetuity. So this project doesn't ever really end, but this is the starting point.
Okay, so from this slide, you can see the area of critical state concern. That act was enabled in 1972. There are currently 6 statewide, 6 area critical state concerns, and that includes the Brevard Barrier Islands. So all development that goes on in that area has to be reviewed by Florida Commerce. So whether it's a building permit, a rezoning, a future land, anything has to go to Florida Commerce for a review. And so the guiding principles for development provides the key statutory protections. It was designated in 2023. Our local plan is based upon existing comprehensive plan with new and strengthened policies. As you know, we had a public workshop. We had 254 participants attend that and 184 respondents in survey. And and that began moving to adopt Part 16 of the County Comprehensive Plan for the BBIA element. So back to the objections, recommendations, and comments. So from Florida Commerce, we only received one objection. We did receive, I believe it was 3 comments, but only one objection. So again, the objections are the things that the county has to resolve before it can move forward. So this speaks a lot to all the work that, you know, was put into it prior to it being transmitted. So as you can see, what the objection was and what we did as a result to satisfy that objection. Can we go to the next slide? So the next slide is one of the comments that was provided by Florida Commerce, and it's to review the use of should and shall, and put those policies listed. So as you can see, our result, we updated to shall in the sections listed below. Next slide. So here's the definition of should and shall. This is in our glossary. So should expresses an obligation, something that's a mandatory action, while shall expresses the command must express what is mandatory. So here is another comment, intergovernmental coordination. And we coordinated with FWC to address their agency comments. So as you can see, that was the result of our collaboration. Next comment was BIPA feedback. Again, we collaborated with BIPA, and that was the result of how we worked to incorporate some of their comments and concerns and their wishes into the comprehensive plan. There were some non-ORC amendments. They were very minor, and that was to change policy 2.5, or I should say update it to clarify the shoreline hardening, prohibition, close potential loopholes, and some other policies were addressed in this as well. And thank you for your time.
I'm going to start off by saying nice job.
Thank you.
I guess my microphone's going in and out, but to everyone on staff, nice job. Well, I'll open it for discussion here with the board.
Mr. Chairman.
I knew you'd have something to say, John.
Just a couple of comments. Acronyms and initialisms are rampant throughout this document. Is there any way to either publish a list of all the acronyms and initialisms so that someone can refer back to them and know what exactly you're talking about? Because there are a lot of initials in every profession and they just get blurry after a while. Sometimes you have the full name, sometimes you just have the initials. And it would be best if you either put the full name in or have a glossary.
There is a glossary in the comprehensive plan, so that's what I want to look at to see which ones of them are actually already in there.
I would put all of them in there,
Yeah.
make it easy for people to read this.
Okay, we can take that recommendation, sure.
Okay, thank you on that. Second thing, the analysis of the public input stated that the major concern was density. And then the secondary concern was sea turtle protection. That's what the public came up with. And I found that item 12, I believe it is, which deals with density, there's a contradiction because there are, with the comp plan. The comp plan says no density in the increase in the barrier islands, period. But here in the BBIA, they have concessions or conditions. So how are you going to address that?
So we were asked by Florida Commerce to put in a separate future land use, to take our existing future land use, move it into the BBIA and rename it. What that does is, if we ever make changes to our existing future land uses, those changes would not affect the land uses in the BBIA.
Okay, but if the comp plan says no density increase, shouldn't the BBIA say the same?
Let me clarify something. Policy 7.1 of the coastal management element that you are referring to still exists and will continue to exist after that, as does 12.1. If you look at the new BBIA, let me just read it out. Consistent with policy coastal management 7.1 of the coastal management element, Brevard County shall not increase residential densities within the BBIA by amending the future land use map designation for such properties. So it's actually restated what's in 7.1, but now it's no longer connected to the coastal high hazard area necessarily, like the argument has been made with the coastal management element. So we're removing that ambiguity, and now it's just a flat statement clarifying flat out no residential density increases. And all the other policy, any zoning or use of land for the people that that already have a certain land use, but we've made some minor adjustments. For example, today and current land use, you can get density bonuses for PUDs, but we've now restricted that. New PUDs won't get that density bonus. By having these policies separated, it allows us to do that. Otherwise, so in other words, it allows us to fork and apply regulations to policies that make sense in the area of critical state concern, but may not make sense.
Darcy.
See, I'm back here. See, I'm back here.
During
Sea turtle
nesting
regulations would be relevant during nesting season, so during March 1st to October 31st.
Okay. So it isn't all year, it's just seasonal.
Correct.
Okay. All right. On 2.4, beach renourishment. Who's paying for all of that? Because we need it.
We have a beaches boating, and I'm sorry, I can't see you, but I'm looking at you through Bonnie.
Okay.
We have a beaches renourishment program through Natural Resources, and that is a variety of funding sources. It's Army Corps, FEMA, state grants. There's the county chips in some. A lot of it is reimbursement after hurricanes. So we have a very robust beach renourishment program. We just finished up another phase right before nesting season, and as soon as nesting season's over, we'll be right back up doing it again, putting some vegetation in and putting more sand down.
Is that renourishment what the Corps is doing currently?
Yes, there's a Cape Canaveral as a project, and there's a bypass project for the port where they have the inlet there, where they have to pump sand from one side to the other. So there's a variety of projects that go on throughout the years.
Okay, just a side question on that. Are there any specifications as to the type of sand that they're using for renourishment?
Oh, yes. Strict, it's the color, the grain size. You have to make sure that it doesn't, if it's too fine, it'll cement up and be too hard to nest in. The color needs to be correct because that can change I believe it can affect the sex of the hatchlings, making them go.
I was more concerned about all the shells that are ground up into that renourishment that I saw in Cape Canaveral.
Well, I mean, that's what sand is, so. But yeah, they do have to check the grain sizes. They do sieve analysis, and it has to be approved by all the permitting agencies, which ranges from, like I said, Army Corps, FWC, FDEP.
Okay. 2.7, oil and gas exploration. Isn't the coastal region in Florida banned from any oil and gas exploration and production?
I could not speak to that with 100% certainty. I think so, but I don't know
I thought
for
the
sure.
governor had done something to that effect to prevent it so that our beaches wouldn't be ruined like they are in Louisiana and Texas.
Yeah, and that may be the case. I just don't know that for sure. I can find out and send you information on that.
If it's not, can we initiate a ban? I
I'm
mean,
looking at
initiate. It
Billy
didn't
and
say
he's
put
shaking
one
his
in.
head.
No,
Yeah.
no, and that was one of the reasons why we worded it the way we did. We can review and comment, and obviously it's not in our jurisdiction to approve or deny. So that's why it's worded the way it is.
Would that have to go up to the state or up to the feds?
I believe it's both, but I'm not 100% sure.
Alex just said both from back here, so.
Probably both. Probably both, okay. Because I don't know if you all have ever gone to a beach that has an oil spill on it, like I used to see in Galveston. It's horrendous. You have to wash your feet with gasoline after you get off the beach. So it's, I'm hoping that they don't allow any of that to happen on our beaches. Let me see if I got anything else.
You don't have anything else? I have a question.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, all right. We'll just go back and forth here, all right. So when we're at 6.7 and we're talking about acceptable hurricane evacuation times, I live down in the South Beaches, and we know that everybody's going to be coming from the Wabasa Beach. It floods all the time, so they're going to be taking A1A. So when we talk here about the level of service, and the information is contained in the Florida Regional Evacuation Study, so I went online and I took a look at the Florida Regional Evacuation Study, and it said to evacuate was going to take us with a Category 5 hurricane 61 hours. Is that somewhere going to be addressed or talked about? I mean, that's kind of,
So I'm going to turn that
scary to
question
me,
to John
so-
Scott, who's our Director of Emergency Management in Brevard County.
Good afternoon. You guys hear me okay? Yeah. So the short answer in that is that 61 hours you're referring to is what's called an operational scenario. If you saw on the table, there's a variety. How about now? Okay, we'll try that again. So there's a variety of options. We follow the base scenarios. The operational scenarios contain a whole lot of other variables that we use to just actually see what different modeling would be. So the base scenario that we would follow for out of county is, I believe, 26, 24, stand by, 26. I also want to point out here that when we talk about evacuation clearance times operationally, so where you guys are concerned about how long it takes to actually evacuate, that is just one piece of the factor, right? We do a lot of things operationally to work within those times. So it is just a piece based on some modeling. There are three to four other factors that actually do more to drive clearance times operationally.
Yeah, and it is a concern. It was my same concern when I read through the comprehensive plan, right? So, but we can get to that as well, I'm sure. But this is just an added layer of protection for us down there. But since I live down there, I'm telling you, I'm thinking to myself, we'll never, our Category 5's coming our way. That's kind of scary,
So let me also just say,
the Wabasa Bridge does flood.
let me just also say, we spend a lot of time planning for those kinds of things. We're very aware of the challenges in the roadway network. We're very aware of how we can be influenced by other regions. There's, again, many other things we do to help mitigate those times. I would also like to point out that, like, Hurricane Irma, which was in 2017, is the largest evacuation in the state's history. We put 7 million people collectively on the road, and we didn't have the kinds of backups and stuff like that folks may remember from the 04 and 05 season, in large part because we understand the roadway network better, and we evacuate slightly differently from how we actually implement it operationally.
Thank you.
I didn't bring that up because that was in the comp plan, that wasn't in the BBIA, right?
Well, it's partially in the BBIA, and then it's in the comp plan about clearance times, and et cetera, so I'll have the same, probably more questions there too, but while you were having a quiet moment, John, I thought I'd hop in.
Mr. Chairman, I had a question about our process today.
Some of the text that's in black, some of the text that's in black, then, or if, I should say, if we make a change to text that's in black underline, Florida Commerce may consider that as a substantial change, because they've already effectively accepted that to implement those things.
Wish I'd known that last year. I would have had a lot of suggestions. I had a lot of suggestions, but everybody said, don't worry about it. You know, it's going to come back and we'll review it a second time.
Well, if I may, just keep in mind, the board may always suggest a new change and, a separate text change. You're not limited to just ear or implementation. This is, if the Board of County Commissioners and this board recommends it, to make a change in addition to that, I mean, that's something that can be done at any time. There's no limit to the amount of text change amendments that can happen. Now, where we're at, the stage we're at in the process today is kind of, I would say, the refinement stage. You come up with new language to meet the ear process, and in this case, the implementation of the BBIA. You get that to Commerce, they look at it to see what may or may not need to be changed, and then we focus on those things. So it should be getting more and more refined. Now, if you see something else in there that you want to make a recommendation, of course, we'll draw your recommendations to the Board of County Commissioners. But I'm just saying, as far as what our risk is, it's in making changes that weren't in that work report at this point.
Okay. I would make a recommendation that in both this BEIA and the comprehensive plan, that who's ever responsible for each one of the sections, take a look at all of the uses of the word should, and either one, change it to shall, or two, delete the policy. My reasoning for that is when you use the word should, you're implying that there's really no commitment behind that. And I also believe that making it having should in there makes it difficult for the county employees to enforce that policy.
Mr. Ron, are you good?
Yeah, are we going to talk about the comprehensive plan separately, or?
Yeah, separate.
Okay.
Yes, John, go ahead.
BBIA 4.5 stipulates where illegal or accidental discharges of materials or violations, you have a fine associated with that as a penalty?
Can you please repeat the policy number? 4.5?
Yeah.
And you asked if there was a fine?
Yeah.
That's going to depend on what the violation is and who handles that. A lot of times that goes to DEP, it goes to the state. And we, in Natural Resources, the county, we take an educational approach to, sometimes people will discharge their pool water, or they're constructing a pool or something, and they'll have discharges out to the lagoon. They may not know any better. We get someone out there to talk to the owner and let them know what are the rules and why do we have them.
But no fines?
I don't think that the county has any fines for this type of discharge. I think that's going to go to the state.
We don't have home rule?
I'll defer to Billy.
I'm going to answer
We've
that
been
for
preempted
Daugherty.
in several areas.
Yeah.
There's preemption.
Okay. On 5.2, it says Brevard County shall address modification of existing development that does not meet stormwater management standards within the stormwater management criteria and should use available financial mechanisms. What does that mean?
I think when we're talking about public projects, retrofitting a stormwater and looking for grants and funding, other than normal sources. I mean, different projects are going to have different funding sources. I mean, we've got soil projects that are stormwater. You got capital projects that are through your tax bill. And then there's a lot of resilience projects that have been ongoing. I shouldn't say a lot. There's resilience projects where you could get special funding for that. And my understanding is in the BBIA, once we're all adopted and cinched up here, there could be additional funding mechanisms that we can tap into as an area of critical state concern. So that would be another potential source of revenue for staff to look at to fund projects.
And what's the timing on something like that? I mean, if you have a failure in a development, and you have to address it right away, but you need to get money to pay for that.
Well, that would be if someone's in violation of their St. John's permit, that would be for St. John's, because you have to, if you're have a subdivision, let's say, or a site plan where the stormwater system is permitted through the state and it fails, then St. John's would deal with that. We also do have site plans that have to be approved through the county, and some things are enforceable through our site plan process, but that would be on a private person, and they'd have to deal with their own funding.
Darcy, I know you're back there.
Okay.
Okay, so I was just worried about existing facilities that fail for whether it's storm damage or just bad design, that we have those financial mechanisms that will handle that immediately, rather than you have to go to the state and say, we need money for this, and it doesn't get repaired for months at a time.
Years.
Well, and if it's a private project that fails, the county, I don't think has any I mean, you're putting someone else's, the private person's funding financial liability on the county to fix it. I mean, and correct me if I'm wrong, Alex, we would go, the property owner would be responsible for that.
But what about the developer that turns over the roads?
Or to any state agency, whether it be St. John's or FDEP. And the county also has code enforcement mechanisms in place that would allow us to, if there was an emergency, apply or bring those fines against the property owner as part of like the remediation of the case itself. So if we had to go in and do an emergency repair or something like that, that would be an avenue to recuperate those funds.
Okay.
Also, I live in Turtle Bay. They don't have water. So just wondering.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Were there any problems, are there any ideas about sewage on BBIA in that critical area of concern?
We have Eddie Fontaine, our utilities director here. So.
The education of the public by signage, who provides all those signs for the public to see that it's a manatee area? They have it with the
Obligated at all.
Are you referring to whether or not our comp plan regulations would apply in an area that becomes incorporated?
When I say when Vieira goes into a city, potentially Merritt Island goes into a city, they will be under a whole new set of rules. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. The jurisdiction would have to update their comp plan to incorporate those areas, and then they would be entitled to whatever, land use regulations apply to them.
That was my only question.
That's a good point. That's good.
That's it. Thank you.
So with that, we're seeking a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners on approval, denial, and it looks like some members of the public may be looking to speak.
Is there anyone in the audience want to speak for or against this? Are you the only one, ma'am? Let's see.
There's two.
Two. Ma'am, if you could come up and state your name and address for the record, and I'll give you 3 minutes. Yes.
Sandra Sullivan, South Patrick Shores. Just a couple things I want to talk about. The first one is about the future land use map and the comments made that they are entitled to additional density. So I want to point out that the Department of Commerce, formerly DEO, in response to Brevard County 21-01 ESR, made a comment pertaining to some property rights policy, letting them know that future land use is not a property right. So I will bring that up to the chair. I also want to mention that the BBIA is something to celebrate because this is the first one in 45 years and it was essentially happened because a vote was taken under public comment to upzone South Beaches, and so in consequence of that, got the assistance of our state rep as a checks and balance. Sea turtle wise, we are the largest loggerhead nesting in the world. We're the key to their survival. Armand was destroyed. They had about double of us, so it's exceedingly important. One thing that's missing in this report, it's called the CBRA, the Coastal Resource Barrier Island Act, is a federal act which prohibits federal monies within that area of the CBRA. There's no mention of the CBRA in here. There are 2 areas of Brevard that have area designation. One is in South Beaches and one is up in Lake Palinda Beach. So that is missing. But I think that Section 12 needs to be addressed, given that the Department of Commerce saying that the future land use is not a property right. I also want to address evacuation because I don't think it's spelled out well in here, and I understand the clearance time part is in the other section, and I'll talk about that. But this area is, 30 miles long from the bridge way down the south? That bridge floods early on. So the only way out is north to 192, where everybody else is trying to get out. And so this particular area, as an area in Brevard, has unique challenges that I do not think that the evacuation part is adequately addressed. And it should be stated in here, the state standard is 16 hours.
Okay. All right. Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, would you like to speak?
Mary Spar.
If you could state your name and address
Yes.
for the record, please.
Mary Spar. I live in Cocoa, and I'm representing Sierra Club Turtle Coast Group. Sierra Club has reviewed the BBIA amendment carefully. This amendment is extremely important for adequate protection of habitat and coastal resources. Please recommend approval of the BBIA amendment to the County Commission. We support approval of the amendment, recognizing that there is one particular change that needs to happen in the next amendment. We can't do it right now because it would be a substantial change according to staff. What's needed is a policy outlawing a change of residential land use designations to commercial land use designations. In other words, a change of intensity of land use, something mentioned multiple times during the transmittal phase. We are just getting a little more specific and asking for no changes from residential to commercial to allow the building of hotels and prevent changing residential to commercial land use and zoning to allow a large multifamily affordable housing project under the state's Live Local Act, and prevent changing residential to commercial, getting PUD zoning, and then taking advantage of the fact that any residential component of that PUD can have a density greater than the original residential designation. Now, Sierra Club understands that prohibiting a change of BBI land use from residential to commercial would be a substantial change, which is not allowed at this point in time. But in the next comp plan update, the county could transmit such a policy for the BBIA. And just a little while ago, Billy Prasad commented that this is an ongoing process over many years. In conclusion, we're asking you to recommend to the County Commission that they consider a carefully worded policy prohibiting this specific intensity change in their next comp plan update, and we're also recommending adoption of the BBIA amendment now.
All right, thank you, ma'am. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to speak for or against this item? All right, seeing that, I'm going to close it for public comment, bring it back to the board. Board, do we have any other questions for staff?
I'm only going to say one thing, staff, you've done a marvelous job. As much time and effort has gone into this. If anybody's got something critical to say, you need to take them out. But you guys have worked. There's no question. The amount of meetings you all have had, and many of us tried to keep up with that. And I think you've done a great job. So I don't know if the commission will tell you, but at least we did.
I need a motion.
I make a motion we accept as submitted.
Second.
All right, we got a motion for item H11 by Henry, a second by Rob. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item H11 passed unanimously. We want to read in item H12.
Item H12, staff is seeking a recommendation for adoption of the Evaluation and Appraisal Review, EAR, based on amendments to the comprehensive plan under application 24 LS 00002 to the State Land Planning Agency, Florida Commerce, for review under the state coordinated review process established by section 163.3184 Florida statutes.
Is there anyone in the audience want to speak for or against this item? Okay, ma'am, if you could come back up and. Have you already submitted this with the staff? Do we already have copies of this?
This is the handout to the boards. They have a copy of what I'm talking prior to they vote. Yep. No, it's not necessary. Those are for them. That form there, if you want to give that to staff, that is from the state commerce. That future land use is not a right, property right. Okay, Sandra Sullivan, South Patrick Shores. Let's see. Okay. Comp plan, our lives matter too. So I have some serious issues about some of the changes that have been made So there was, as a result of a 1999 evacuation study that found critical evacuation deficiency on the barrier island, there was a Merritt Island and Central Barrier Island study. This went from Merritt Island all the way down to Indian Atlantic. The relevancy of that was it was a downzoning study that reduced the density from Res 30 to Res 15. Now the references in the comp plan have changed history, like that didn't exist, and I take objection to it. I would even suggest that it's malfeasance, which is a pretty serious allegation. You'll see, I sent a lot of you guys this letter here. On the back, this shows history. This is from the county itself. The county has shown a commitment to cap or even reduce densities on the barrier island. This process began in the South Beaches area with the adoption of the 192 South Beaches Small Area Study and has continued to present day. As recently as the 2000B plan amendment cycle, the county adopted comprehensive plan amendments that capped the residential densities for the unincorporated areas on the northern and central barrier island at existing levels. So what have we done? We've taken Merritt Island, and for the Myra area, we have changed the density there to Res 30. Now, Res 30 in the comp plans, and I sent you got a bunch of you, I don't have everybody's email address, a document from the 2000B comprehensive plan that explicitly, that Res 30 was only for 3 properties. Only for 3 properties. So the other thing that is a major change is that of evacuation. So evacuation, defined by state statute, 163, what is that, 3178 or 2178, it's in there, states that the state level of service is for 16 hours for a category 5 out of county. And so what the county is doing is they are shifting to a clearance time. A clearance time is whatever time it takes. It is not a level of standard, level of service standard as defined by state statute. And so, you ask the question of staff. You know, does that mean we're going to revert back to, as a level of service to the state 16 hours? Because we're not defining it. And in the I would appreciate, this is a huge document. This should have been broken down into sections and have the public able to comment. 3 minutes on a 1,000-page document is absolutely ridiculous.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, would you like to speak also?
Hello again, Mary Spar. I live in Cocoa, and I'm speaking for Sierra Club Turtle Coast Group. Sierra Club supports adoption of the ear-based amendments, though we would like to see one change made first. There are a handful of inconsistencies between the coastal management element and the new BBIA amendment for the South Barrier Island that need fixing right now. Let me explain. The state agency Florida Commerce sent separate ORC reports on the EAR and BBIA amendments. They objected to some of the BBIA amendments and had negative comments on others, but they overlooked the same exact problems in the coastal management element included in the EAR. In particular, the state found that policy BBIA 2.6 lacked a specific timeline for a reevaluation of the effectiveness of the county's coastal setback line, or CSL. But they failed to mention the exact same lack of a specific time frame in the coastal management element policy CM 4.2. And obviously, it's very important to reevaluate this really old line in a timely manner. Also, BBIA policy 5.8, which encourages nature-based design and low-impact development for areas vulnerable to flooding, was flagged by the state for weak language, specifically the use of should instead of shall. The state overlooked the same weak language in coastal management policy CM 14.9. In general, what the county did was change the BBIA amendment to please the state, but left the corresponding coastal management policies alone. Staff's new changes to these two BBIA policies flagged by the state are really excellent. At a minimum, Sierra Club would like coastal management policies corrected for the same defects the state spotted in BBIA language. In conclusion, please recommend to the County Commission adoption of the EAR Amendment after correction of important inconsistencies between coastal management element policies and updated BBIA policies.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Anybody else like to speak for or against this item? All right, seeing that, I'm going to close that for public comment. I bring it back to the board. Do we have any more questions or comments for staff?
I have questions for staff.
Miss Ruth, yes.
Can I have clarification on what the state statute for level of service on the barrier island, getting off the barrier islands would be?
Sure. It looks like it's section 163.3178, and then it's subsection 8.
Does it give an exact time?
So I'll have to defer to John, but my understanding of the statute is that it says there's essentially 3 prongs to it, right? So a proposed comp plan amendment shall be found in compliance with state coastal high hazard provisions if the adopted level of service for out-of-county hurricane evacuation is maintained for a Category 5 storm event as measured on the Saffir-Simpson scale. And then there's 2 other options. So I'll defer to John as to how we calculated that.
Yeah, so our understanding and the way we read it is because we have an adopted level of service, which is the out-of-county clearance time in the regional evacuation study, which we're comfortable with, we meet that standard.
And the purpose for removing the evacuation route map out of the comp plan?
So I'll take that one too. So evacuation route maps, some of that's just cleaning up. We did that in our plan as well. Evacuation route maps are candidly a bit antiquated. Most folks these days, when they evacuate with a destination. That's what we see over and over again. Most folks are using their phone. At this point in time, pretty much all roads are evacuation routes. So it just is, it's no longer applicable to where we are in time.
I was curious because I went on to the emergency management website because I was curious. So many new people move to Florida every day. They're completely unfamiliar. And granted, most people have phones these days.
Yes, ma'am.
But I couldn't find a map anywhere. I even asked 2 extra people to try and find something for me, and we could come up with nothing.
Again, we do not post one.
Interesting.
Again, all the conversations we've had, and we spend a tremendous amount of time in our community doing outreach and talking to folks, the actual evacuation route, that comes back from a period of time in 2004 and 2005 and prior to that, where you were using actual roads where people didn't evacuate with destinations. That really is a big difference. The majority of folks today, should you evacuate, are evacuating with a destination. In 2004 and 2005, which I know is seared into our memory culturally, you didn't have the ability to go on your phone and book a hotel. You didn't have the ability to look at those kinds of things. You didn't have Waze. You didn't have Google or Apple Maps, which modeled dynamically, which is sort of a way to tell you if you have traffic coming up, take this off-road instead of that road. All of those capabilities exist today. So it no longer makes sense to do those.
So there won't be any more like evacuation route signs on the road or anything?
So evacuation route signs are handled by DOT, so I would defer to them for that, because those are pretty much primarily their roads.
Go ahead.
Are you done?
I have more, but you can skip in.
Okay, so this is where I had my question too. So then the level of service that's acceptable for say, a Category 5 hurricane for those of us on the barrier island would be what?
So right now, that level of service is 26 hours.
We're saying 26 hours, and the state would like it to be 16, right?
That is if you
true?
do not adopt a level of service.
Okay, so, all right. It's now, all right, and that's now, I had the hardest time finding this Brevard County Comprehensive Emergency Management Plan online and
Correct.
seeing anything, anything, oh, excuse me. And then when I went to the clearance times, right, and then it says, the Florida Regional Evacuation Study, so actually what Ms. Sullivan pulled up is what I was referring to previously, the
Yes, ma'am.
61 hours. So the clearance time simply is how much time it takes to get people off wherever we are, the worst case
So
scenario.
the clearance time is a calculation based on a model that the state runs, where it runs a variety of destinations, and it literally takes the amount of people that would theoretically evacuate based on several things that includes a behavior model. It then turns those folks into trips, so cars, and then models them. And they look like small little dots running around, and by the time all the dots get where they're supposed to go, you basically get a number. And then again, like I mentioned earlier, that number is a part of the equation when we actually look at operationalizing evacuation decision-making.
Gotcha.
So those are two separate things, operational clearance time, or clearance times, and then operational evacuation decision-making. Clearance time is a piece of that equation.
Perfect. Okay.
So, and forgive me if I missed it somewhere in that, does it mention the level of service standard anywhere in the evacuation information in the comp plan? Because I feel like that would be beneficial if the level of service standard was put there.
So again, on that, one of the reasons why we made the change to the comp plans to point to one specific place is because the comp plan, our comprehensive emergency management plan, and the regional evacuation study are simply on different times, like when they get updated. So rather than always having to chase those things, which we have done for years, this was a way to sort of streamline and clean those things up to just simply point at the regional evacuation study. Let me answer this question ahead. If we ever reach to a point where we suddenly find ourselves in a situation where we think the level of service, the regional out-of-county clearance time, would be a problem for us to maintain, then we would act and do different things. But right now, we're comfortable with the number.
I just think it would be good for transparency.
Understood.
I agree, because I really did have a hard time finding the level of
It was
service.
difficult.
So, anyway, and then the last one was 8.3, so Brevard County shall identify roadway and operational improvements to hurricane evacuation network based upon capabilities, limitation, vulnerabilities, and it goes down to criteria. Priority shall be given to improvements of roadway networks serving hurricane evacuation routes with the greatest number of people. Well, I can assure you that the people in the South Beaches, we do not have the greatest number of people, but it will take us it's the hardest for us to get out of where we're at. We cannot, it is 30 miles if you go to get to 192 from the Wabasso Bridge, along with other people from, it'll be hard for us. So I don't know if there's any priority. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't want to say, oh, well, take us, we're the best, but I mean, like,
So I will answer that in a couple of ways, which is one, so I'm born and raised here. So I get the South Beaches. In fact, I get quite a bit of this stuff. And again, transportation networks are holistic. So improvements you make on all streams can affect things. But one of the biggest things we do, and it's why I talk about clearance times being a factor, but not the driver in this conversation, is the bigger piece when we talk about clearance or evacuation decision-making is how many folks do we put on the road at the same time? Because you can handle a lot of people over a long period of time, or you can bottleneck a road just by putting a small number of people. And the greatest example that I'm sure we all experience every day, if you find one of our pinch points throughout the county at 5 o'clock or 8:30 in the morning, traffic is backed up. Roll through there at 6:15, it's flowing again. So we spend a lot of time on doing something we call a soft phasing of evacuation, so that we're constantly putting folks on the road, but we're never at one point dumping a lot of folks on the road. And we've seen that continue to work. in 2016, 2017, as we began to implement those kinds of things. We saw it in Dorian. It is a statewide best practice. We are in line with all of those kinds of things, and it really is about throttling roadway traffic and looking at where those areas come from. Like what we do, what happens on the west side of 192 in Melbourne definitely impacts those kinds of things. But again, I'll just come back to, because folks are using smart technology like cell phones and those kinds of things that are picking those things up, some folks from the South Beaches will cut over on Riverside and get to 192 faster. They may take it all the way down to O'Galley or Pine Neck. That stuff is happening naturally. And that is a more holistic and accurate way to look at evacuation modeling than just a sort of a clearance time, which, by the way, doesn't take into account time of day or any of those kinds of things, when storm's going to arrive. I know this is a lot in deep in the woods or deep in the weeds on evacuation planning. It is complicated. We take it very serious, and we try to make sure that all of our residents, especially our Barrier Island residents, have enough time to evacuate safely.
Thank you. Yeah, because for those of us down there in the South Beaches, we can take Oak, we can take Riverside, we can do a lot of things, but we have to take A1A for many miles,
Yes, ma'am.
right, to get there, unless we want to swim.
Yeah.
So that's sort of,
Again, we pay a lot of attention to it.
thank you, thank you.
You through? I've just got one comment. When you did the evacuation calculations for Merritt Island, did you take into account the NASA route included in that?
When you say that, so let me be clear, like, we don't do it by area, it's for the whole county, it's for the whole network.
Okay.
And yes, like, when you talk about, you're talking about the NASA evacuation around the visitor center?
The NASA from the north end of Merritt Island that transitions
Yeah.
into the NASA Causeway.
Yes, sir.
Did you add that to the system?
That was part of the roadway network that was modeled.
Okay. Did you also add the other portion that goes straight up, and it's what's called Old A1A?
You're talking
that
about the
brings
part
us
that
into
goes
the
through?
Titusville?
Yeah.
Did-
Any active roadway that we can push cars
Okay.
onto is modeled.
Yeah, because NASA has a tendency to change the rules when the weather gets bad.
We work well with them.
I understand. Was there ever a determination the percentage of people, specifically the Merritt Island, that would stay?
So again, the way it looks at it is holistically. It is based on a behavioral model that samples.
Yeah.
So the amount of people that stay versus go is one of the banes of our existence as far as trying to figure out what that is. I will tell you that is far more storm dependent, and trying to find good behavioral studies for that is a struggle.
Merritt Island people are different.
So I grew up on Merritt Island, sir.
They'll stay before they go.
Grew up on Merritt Island, sir.
There you go. That's it.
I have some questions about utilities.
Miss Ruth, yes.
Yes.
Before we get off of that, can I ask you a question about about the?
Yeah, go ahead.
Now, before we get off the topic of.
Ron, we can't hear you, sir.
Sorry. There we go. Referencing policy CM 8.4 says that essentially this board can recommend a denial of a development if it's going to create a problem with evacuations. And my question was, the only thing that we referred to is this table that shows how you evacuate the entire county. And that, to me, doesn't have enough granularity. If we wanted to say, do we want to approve a development or not in BBIA? And our question is, what about the hurricane? So if we have 100 people coming in, that's going to affect our evacuation times somewhat. So how much of a change in the evacuation time do we have for this board to be able to recommend a denial? And the other question is, who calculates that? I understand about traffic studies, and a developer can provide a traffic study. Is a developer going to have to provide us with some data about evacuation times?
So as of today, our emergency management group tracks that, and they keep that in their modeling, through their modeling. And so if and when it gets to a point where their modeling shows there's an issue, they'll alert the planning department, and we will take appropriate action based on that. As of today, that has not happened, but if that did happen, that's how that would work.
I'm talking about development that doesn't exist yet. It's only in the planning stage. So you can't have a model for something that doesn't exist. So we've got a development in BBIA that there's going to put 100 homes, 150 homes in that area. And we would like to know, is that going to create a problem with evacuation times?
Well, for one thing, I'll just say that the BBIA specific comprehensive plan, and that goes back to what we were talking about before, that we're in the implementation phase. This is the comprehensive plan element. The next stage is doing the LDRs, and so that may be part of that then. Right now, we're really talking about countywide because we haven't done the LDRs for the BBIA as of yet. So that'll be the next phase that Trina was talking about earlier that has to be done within the next 12 months.
Okay.
Last question, I promise, but is there any way, so I was so interested when I heard that, and I'm kind of new to this, that future land use are not property rights. Is that true? Is that a truth? I'm confused.
I'll let Alex talk about it, but I think context matters. I mean, in this case, the Brevard Barrier Island Protection Act itself stated that people get to continue their zoning and use of land. And so I think most people would take that to mean their land use, or at least to some degree. So, I mean, some of it's subject to interpretation, but I think when the act itself specifies zoning and use of land, they mean something beyond zoning. So that in itself created some, property right is next, but we wouldn't be able to change somebody's rights based on the act that says they get to keep it, in other words, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so just to build on that, there's certain expectations that property owners have or people that are going to buy property have. So yeah, that is part of their expectation, what they could build up on their property.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth.
You're welcome.
Mr. John.
He asked if.
Oh,
could I
hold
come
on,
back?
John, because Ruth did give the floor to Ron there. Okay, Ruth, go ahead.
Utilities, please. I have some questions about the water supply work plan, page 16. And please correct me if I have calculated wrong. Max in MIMS, the average is 99 gallons per capita per day, and 118 is max, according to the outline. It says that the BEBR average household size in Brevard County is 2.33. So would I be wrong in multiplying 118 at max gallons times 2.33 to come up with the actual usage of an ERC or a home?
Hi, I'm Lucas Siegfried. I'm the engineering
Hi.
manager for Brevard County Utilities. So just give me 1 second. I'm just going to pull up what I have in front of me.
No problem, no problem.
Thank you. So I don't have it directly in front of me. I'm just going to answer it. So in regards to the Bieber model, that's a general population analysis that gives you general populations. We're doing our own population study as well. In regards to the flows and what we're using for them, there's the 118, which is the maximum, which was referenced, and that's a planning number.
Mm-hmm.
And then in terms of, sorry, actually repeat the calculation of what you're asking, your overall question.
So the max I believe GPCD is per capita daily, is 118, and right underneath that, it states that LOS of Brevard County Comp Plan adjusted with BEBR average household size 2.33. So in my thought process, if you took the average household size, which is 2.33 people, and you multiplied that by the single use of 118 gallons per day, is that how you would figure out how much on average with these calculations that a household or an ERC would use?
Okay, I understand the question. So for us, when we do that analysis, we're using real data. So the numbers that are listed there are the planning numbers. So it's the maximum flow. For example, your reference is 118, right? When we look at what household actual consumptive use is, we're referring to the actual data that we have from the plants in terms of what those flows are and what it is coming from residential density, or from the residences, number of connections.
One more time.
Okay, so you're asking about the calculation.
Right, because if you do that, it comes up to 275 gallons per day per ERC or home. And the current regulations for this are set at 200 or 220, and it's asking to be raised to 250. But if that's true, I would say that level of service standard is still below the actual use. That is my question.
Okay. My apologies, so let me clarify. So you're focusing on the max gallons per capita value per day, which is
Right.
the 118, whereas the number you'd really want to refer to would be the 99.
I refer to the max per capita because state statute says that you have to have adequate water, implying that in times of drought, fire, or whatever that circumstance may be, that you have adequate water for all of those circumstances. So I would refer to the max because that is where adequate water comes from.
So Ruth, a few things. So when we do level of service, it's always based on average. Even with the average based on the 2.33 number, it'll still get us a number that is by usage. It's a triangulation. So the 233 number by the calculation by the Bieber density and by the 100 gallons per day per capita, which is not only stated in the water supply plan, but it's also a rule of thumb best practice usage, still gets us at a number that we're having a level of service with a margin of water supply. In addition, we also looked at the current water usage. So we take all the billing data and we associate it based on a 5/8 meter, which is synonymous with a single residential home. And looking at that to get an equation or a calculation on a level of service based on a single family home, and I believe we sent you a memorandum on 3 months of data, but we've looked at further, it gets you in a range of around 158, 171. With that, at a level of service of 250, we feel there's still adequate room in there in order for unaccounted for water and water supply.
So is the way that you formulate that somewhere in the comp plan? Did I miss that? Because I thought, and please, I'm not, but I thought the point of this was to lay out the way that it gets figured out. And if we're figuring it some other way would be is my question.
So as we sit here and focus on the water supply plan, I think, and Billy was touching base on this, that the process that we're looking at is, it doesn't stop. So with that being said, we originated with an old water supply plan and obviously a needed update to the EAR. So the issue is you can't make and again, I'm not the state and I don't make this process. Step one is you have to modify to the best of the ability within the current comp plan, the water supply plan. So as we go through this, we have updated that to appease the state based on best data available and based on what's currently adopted in the EAR. So until the board approves it, we're still working off of that old information. And I don't mean to refer to it as old, but it's the full intent that as Billy described, there was other actions after the EAR gets approved. One of the other actions is to update the water supply plan to make it current. So as we use the level of service that's being proposed in the EAR amendment, we would then soon after be updating the water supply plan so that both documents were consistent with each other.
Because it was just updated in 2024 and again now. So what's on current?
Because we needed to have an updated EAR to make the amendments to the water supply plan.
Yeah, and I believe under statute, the water supply plan only needs to be adopted. It's a snapshot in time, and we've actually reached out to the St. Johns River Water Management District about that. They would consider whatever's in your comprehensive plan as controlling over the water supply plan, which is meant to be, like I said, a snapshot, a planning document that has to be done within a certain period after the regional water supply plan is done. So it's kind of like Eddie was saying, is one thing follows another. And so there, from a state perspective, there's no surprise at all that at any given time, especially right after you do your EAR, that those two numbers would not match.
And Billy, if I may.
It went from 400 last year to 200 to 220 to 250, is that correct? For the level of service standard? I mean, that's a huge drop by half.
The 400 you're referencing, Ruth, is something that was adopted back in 1990s. So I can't explain where 400 came from. It's an extremely conservative. What we have done is, in order to get that level of service to a more appropriate number, and this is going back to the triangulation that we've done with billing data, with data from the plant, and it also coincides with what's currently in the ordinance based on the level of service as referenced in, I think it's 163, Billy, if I'm not mistaken, that references 250.
So having a level of service that is lower than the max level of demand is appropriate, is what you're saying?
The level of service currently, the proposed and the one that's current, the 200 and the 250 gallons per day per ERC, that currently exceeds our demand in both cases.
But not according to this.
No, and that's.
And this is what the people see? This is
That's-
when someone goes to calculate
Well-
something, like people read these things and they can use it to calculate documents with.
To clarify, what are you referring to?
The water supply work plan, page 16.
Okay. So our level of service exceeds the current demands, and this is calculated based on actual consumptive use. So what we see per ERC at our water treatment plants, specifically MIMS, but it's same Barefoot Bay. And that's, the 200 exceeds it and the 250.
The other thing I would suggest is not so many years ago, actually, part of this was just like a year ago, it wasn't a county-wide service standard, and the utilities aren't connected, is my understanding, so Barefoot Bay is not connected to MIMS. They're each in individual ratepayers, and you don't transfer water back and forth, is what my understanding is. And I think it would be better if it was broke out per utility, as those ratepayers are in each individual area, and they are not connected. That would be my other recommendation.
So Ruth, what we've done in the amendment is we've removed the level of service from the water and sewer element and moved the level of service to the capital improvement. If you look in the capital improvement element revisions that we propose, we do have it for what we call North Brevard Barefoot Bay water. So it is listed under there.
I must have missed it because I have the capital improvement in front of me, and it says BCUSD as a county. It lists Barefoot, Cocoa, Melbourne, Palm Bay, Titusville, and Melbourne, and then I have it in the potable water element as well. I must have missed that somewhere. I'm so sorry.
So for the so potable water service, Brevard County Utility Service, which is BCUSD, The only water facility that we have that falls under that is MIMS and actually San Sebastian, which is a minute area. Barefoot Bay would fall under the 150. So they are broken out within this.
Except for MIMS shares with Sebastian? Is that what you said?
We're just using the 250 level of service for Sebastian, but it's for 75 customers.
Right, and that was kind of my point, like each area, as many department heads and commissioners and people on this board have mentioned, it's an extremely long county and it's very diverse. And one of those utilities being on one end of the county and one being on the other, just my recommendation that they should be broke out into their own individual utilities since they are separate. And each area has their own diverse needs. That's all. The other questions I had are on the conservation. And give me just a minute to find my page. It's never where you want it. It talks about reducing or allowing more development in the 10, 25, and 100-year floodplains. What was the logic behind that?
That's a good question. So we have filled footprint and density restrictions right now in the riverine floodplain. What it's doing is it's forcing people to annex into the cities that don't have the floodplain ordinance criteria that we do. We have stronger criteria. So the goal is we're going performance-based for all floodplains. So no matter where you are, you need to demonstrate that you're not causing any adverse impacts on surrounding development or areas or properties. And if Bach were here, he would tell you the technical term about a rise in the peak flood stage, but it's meant to be performance-based and take away the arbitrary criteria of density and fill footprint restrictions out in the riverine floodplain.
I would just mention that, and it's greatly concerning to a lot of residents in North Brevard that would be removed. North Brevard takes a lot of the stormwater from the entire length of the county because at Lake Harney it bottlenecks and cannot flow out at the rate at which it flows to North Brevard. Many residents in North Brevard are experiencing flooding that hasn't been seen in over 100 years. And so removing and reducing those densities and not having them in there, like the restrictions, is very much concerning to those in North Brevard.
Could I provide you an example for densities? So, for instance, and again, this is the St. John's riverine floodplain, not the estuarine floodplain. You could have a subdivision that has 1 unit to the acre, and you could have them spread out. We call that peanut butter style. You spread it out over a bunch of area, or you could have a density that goes up. So your footprint of your density can be this or it can be this. So it's really not the best metric for trying to control flooding. The performance measures are they're based on the actual site conditions and the engineering. And I'll also add that our stormwater section program is doing a lot of flood studies right now. We have a grant to do a countywide flood study. We're going to be looking at rainfall on top of storm surge, on top of future conditions. So we're gathering more and more data, actual site data, and trying to get away on relying on, for instance, for St. John's River, we rely on a report from St. John's from the 80s, and I think Anna's probably had to deal with that in the past when you were doing engineering, to look at the current conditions as they exist today and what's actually happening with the water.
Yeah, there's a lot of, even the FEMA flood zone maps aren't current enough
No.
for North Brevard.
We use
There's property in North Brevard that I believe zoned for one home per 2.5 acres that sits under 10 foot of water. That was pre-Ian.
Yeah, we use best available data whenever we can, and that would be, it might be a FEMA map, it may be a flood study that Public Works did, it could be something that we did in Natural Resources. So we do look for best available data.
And I'm failing to find it because you never find anything when you want it. There was an exception in here, and it said see a different element, and it took you to where it was concerning the floodplain, and it talked about allowing PUD on the floodplain. So would that be like development of the floodplain? I don't understand that.
Allowing a PUD.
You're referring to a particular policy, or?
Yes, I'm so sorry.
Bonnie.
I'm so sorry. Was talking about the floodplain, and I really tried to highlight everything so I wouldn't be looking for it. And then it talked about except if you go to this certain policy, and then it started talking about PUD on the floodplain.
So Ruth, I'll just tell you from my personal experience in designing in Brevard County, whether it's PUD, R2, C2, it doesn't matter what my zoning category is, I'm required to meet that compensatory storage floodplain requirement. The PUD might give me flexibility on where I locate houses, the sizes of my houses, those types of things, but I still have to meet all of the flood-dependent criteria, no matter what. Doesn't matter what my zoning category is.
So that was kind of like my question, because if it allows that, so if you go from one home per 10 acres on, depending on which floodplain you're talking about, and then you can turn around and cluster homes on the floodplain, that's a huge difference in impact.
So PUD, if you're talking about doing kind of, one of the other goals that we have is from our peril of flood policies, we need to codify them. And strategies that you can use are cluster development to reduce your infrastructure or your footprint of infrastructure. So if you only have this much impervious and you can reduce your amount of stormwater and roads and all sorts of stuff. So the PUD does provide flexibility that can hopefully get us to encourage applicants to do this type of development that will be a benefit to the environment, to the developer, to the people that live there, and to the surrounding area. So, I would see that as an important tool to provide flexibility for low-impact development and green stormwater infrastructure. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yes and no. My thought was, and please, and it's a very big and diverse county, so I can't speak for what things I don't know. But no development I've seen come into the north area has developed on acre lots or one home per 2.5 acres. Those lot sizes are generally, from what I've seen in my experience, and I'm certainly not an expert, owner builders generally. And so allowing to switch that around, I think just allows for more development on the floodplain, and that should be considered.
Can you restate the question one more time?
I'm obviously not an expert on development everywhere, and I don't claim to be. Just from what I see in my own neck of the woods, I would say, most development that I've seen go into North Brevard are really small lot sizes, not big lot sizes. So if you change it on the floodplain from one home per 2.5 acres or one home per 5 acres, and you allow cluster, you're actually, I think, inviting the PUD to the floodplain, because traditionally they don't build out that way. that's just something I thought should be considered. And the only other thing I really thought was, I think it's probably really important for staff to go out on site. And that was taken out of, it was put to, it was one of the should shalls, I believe, and where staff doesn't have to go do site visits. They may, I believe was the term. And with such a diverse county, I think it's important for you to see the site that's being developed to help your considerations.
Understood.
That's it.
Was there a policy, I'm sorry, was there a policy number for that particular car?
I can get it to you in just a minute.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
I think I got John ahead of you, Ron.
Okay.
Ruth, are you? All right, Mr. John.
Okay, I have to apologize. I didn't finish the whole document. Was there anything in there on PUDs? Because I've been concerned that we have a PUD res in the code. And to me, it's a workaround from zoning restrictions. Used to be, my understanding was a PUD was supposed to have all types of development, commercial, residential, some industrial. But that PUD res that came up in one of our planning and zoning meetings, it just seems to be a loophole. And I was wondering, I didn't see it in here, and
Hey,
I was
John,
just
it's in
curious
here.
if it still exists.
I'm sorry, what was it?
John, it's in here.
It is, you have a page?
Page 1105.
See, I never
It's a
got
few-
that far.
Future Land Use 1.1, Criteria F, page 1105. In the past, we have used BDPs to establish concurrency between zoning and land use. And if I understand what this means is that now the applicant is going to have to request a change to both zoning and land use. Is that correct?
Policy 1.5.
Policy 1.1, Criteria F, page 1105.
Oh, okay. So I think there's just a misunderstanding. So it says policies, just so everybody's on the same page. Policies established in specialized plans, including binding development plans, as may be adopted by the Board and County Commissioners. And then there's some new language. Binding development plans shall not be used to establish consistency between future land use map designations and zoning classifications. So I think you're talking about more of use consistency. This is talking about, there's actual chart in our code. This is, for example, Res 4 is consistent with X zoning, commercial, community commercial
Yeah,
is
we've had,
consistent.
one of our applicants has done it at least twice that I can remember, of using a BDP to say, okay, I'm not going to change the land use, but I'm going to use the BDP to
Right.
restrict the number of housings so that it meets the zoning requirement.
And then,
And then we said, okay, that's fine. Now, with this, we're not going to be able to do that, and that person's going to have to come in and do a land use change and a zoning change.
right, they need to establish consistency between the zoning map and the future
Yeah,
land use.
I just wanted to
We do
clarify.
think that should be done for multiple reasons, but we.
Right, I wanted to understand, I understood what that meant.
My comment was on the PUD, not on the BDP.
Yeah, if I can get back to that, just so there's a, I'm going to say a separate project from this going on. The board, quite a while ago, issued legislative intent permission to advertise for us to look at amending the PUD code. And one of the things we are looking at is making a uniform PUD and getting perhaps removing a residential PUD, and just making a single uniform PUD classification. That would be in the cards. That would be after this project.
Okay.
So, but that is something we're looking at, yes.
All right, I appreciate it. My next question is Merritt Island considered a barrier island?
It is, but I would say depending on the context.
100%, okay. Because I'm looking at the affordable housing ordinance. We have Juanita and Alan here, and they've just been sitting through all this. The no density bonuses on barrier islands, which means that the affordable housing ordinances will prohibit any density bonus on Merritt Island. Is that correct? Being a barrier island.
I really want to look at the context and give me time to get back with a specific answer.
Okay.
Because it is considered a barrier island in certain contexts for sure. But I want to make sure it's not speaking to the barrier islands along the beach in that context. So, for example, in Myra, there's specific density bonuses given in the redevelopment area, for example.
Right.
So I need to, I can get back to you with that answer.
Okay, thank you. Is affordable housing allowed on any of the barrier islands?
Well, if you're talking about like Live Local, for example, we're preempted. So if they have commercial land use and they can meet all the other regulations, then yes, they certainly can. But that's a big if. I mean, they have to meet all the applicable regulations. The only thing they get preempted is zoning and land use, density, and certain parking requirements and height restrictions and things like that. But assuming they could meet all of the criteria, that could be done, yes.
But it wouldn't be the highest and best use for the land.
Depending on the situation, probably not.
Okay, one other question I have. If a developer has been granted variances on height on their construction, can that height be used within a half a mile for another developer to take it?
I believe that was addressed in the last update to the legislation. I would want to double check to make sure to give you the right answer, but I believe that was made clear that would not be used. But I would really want to check to make sure I'm right about that. But I think that was part of the glitch bill the last time around.
Okay, if you could look into that, please, it'd be very helpful. Okay.
Can I ask one more question?
Are you done, John? For now?
No, you're not.
Yes, Ms. Root.
What, some of the small area studies are included into the comp plan. What is the criteria that puts them in there?
Generally speaking, that's just the board direction at the time that the small area study was implemented and brought to the board. So that's a board decision on what, if any, recommendations are carried over into the comprehensive plan.
So I was curious, how come the MIM small area study wasn't included? Because it was adopted by the board in 2007, and its future land use was transmitted with the comp plan.
So it's quite a complex situation. So they adopted certain parts of it. They adopted the future land use, certain future land use maps, changes that were recommended, and not others. What they never did was adopt a text change to the comprehensive plan that would actually adopt certain policies into the comprehensive plan. So I guess the word adopted, they adopted certain things and they didn't adopt other things.
Well, I thought they adopted the whole plan and then recommended for the future land uses to be transmitted to the state with the comp plan.
What they wound up actually doing is adopting certain future land use map changes, not a text change to the comprehensive plan.
So wouldn't those future land use map changes be in there as a part of it if it was transmitted?
Only as to those maps. So, and that's where things get a little interesting, because the text, the reason for that, for those future land use map changes were not applied elsewhere through the comprehensive plan. Now, the small area study still exists, and that can be used for whatever a board member thinks it is appropriate to use it for. but it is not actually adopted as a comprehensive plan by reference.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Ron.
Question on policy, future land use 1.2, criteria A and criteria C. What is the word, how do I define the word impact? For example, it says that the advisory board cannot recommend approval of a project when the water or sewer will not be available until, Well, we recently approved a project where the water and sewer wouldn't be available for a year or two. And I was wondering, and the reason we did that was because the applicant said they had all this engineering to do, and so there wouldn't really be any impact for that time. So it was all right for us to approve it. Does this criteria change that ruling or anything?
Can you tell me the policy one more time? So you say 1.2?
Yes, 1.2 criteria A and C.
Oh, that's BBIA. Sorry, 1.2 of which element?
Criteria A and criteria C. I was kind of looking for a definition of when impact is.
Well,
Is it when the development is approved by the board? Or is it when the first construction starts? Or is it when the first resident moves in?
Well, I'd want to check first the glossary to make sure that it's not specifically defined there. And if it's not, generally that would be up to the board to figure out what that means at the time that they make the decision.
Okay, so we would be able to do again what we did then. So that shouldn't be a problem.
Like I said, I'd want to, if I was actually had that in front of you today, I'd want to check the glossary to make sure.
Okay.
But,
And then I had a question on future land use 1.2 criteria E on page 1106. And the text kind of didn't make sense to me. Criteria E says, where public water service is not available, development proposals greater than 2 years shall be required to connect to a central sewer system. I don't understand the relationship between the water system not available and having to use a sewer system.
I think that refers to the second part. I think there's two different things. Within BMAP areas where public sewer service is not available, the installation of enhanced nutrient on-site sewage treatment and disposal systems is required.
I was just wondering if that first sentence should have been deleted. Because I still don't understand why.
We'll look at that, but I don't necessarily think it needs to be deleted, and I think it still would apply.
For example, if you look up in criteria D right above it, what was changed was public water became public sewer. And I was wondering if in this case, either we want to change public water to public sewer or else get rid of that sentence entirely. All right, you can take a look at that.
Yeah, we'll take a look at it.
Let's see. I had another question. Oh, just for to clean stuff up. In future land use 1, page 1104, there's a list of criteria. It goes, item F is missing, so I don't know if you just need to renumber that.
Did you say future land use 1.11? Which policy?
Future land use 1, page 1104.
We'll take a look at it.
Okay. And then in future land use administrative policy 2, gets rid of using photographs, aerial photographs. And it seems to me that aerial photographs help this board understand the project that's being developed and where it's being developed. So I'd like to see us continue to use aerial photographs.
And obviously, there's live imagery that is available today, from a variety of sources. And so I think that's the main reason why that was removed.
Where was that, Ron?
Administrative policy 2, criteria B.
What page?
Page 1100.
Thank you.
And then I have a favorite criticism, which I hear all the time, people confusing number with amount. And in policy CM 8.3, criteria B, on page 1069, we used the term volume of people. People are not measured by volume, they're discrete entities. So please change that to number of people.
Noted.
And I had one other general comment. Oh, I'd already talked about the use of the word shall and should, and I was looking at the historic preservation element and found that there was no changes in that. No changes for 7 years. And one of the policies at HP 2.1 says the county should facilitate adoption of a historic preservation ordinance. So we haven't been able to do that in 7 years. So what I'm telling you is that that's a perfect example of why should not be used in ordinances, in policies. There's no commitment to doing anything. And my suspicion is if we looked at the previous 7-year cycle, we might even find that that's been in there for those 7 years as well. I'd recommend just taking that policy out and deleting it. If we're not going to do it, why have it in there?
We do have a historical preservation ordinance.
Then why are we saying we should have one? If we met that, why is it still in there and saying we should develop one?
Just as a procedural matter, the year is designed to update us and to be in compliance with state statute. So there was no need to amend that section to be in compliance with state statute. Nevertheless, as Trina showed up in the slide earlier, should has a specific meaning. Does it mean the same as shall? No. But it does actually have a meaning, particularly to staff. So, we do take it seriously.
All right, that's all I've got. Thank you.
Any more? I'm sorry, were you going to say something?
No.
Ruth, you good?
As good as I can be, yes.
I'm sorry?
Yes.
Ron? That's fine. Well, that's all I got.
We missed you, Ron.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
John?
I'm good.
Erica?
I am really good. I might suggest that we break this up into a couple of sessions next time, rather than one, just if anybody wants an opinion, because it was a lot of reading, right? And it's a lot to retain and understand, so.
A whole lot.
Thank you.
And again, throughout all the conversation, I'm going to back what Henry said. Staff, excellent job. Excellent job. I need a motion for item H12.
I make a motion to accept item H12.
A second.
Item H12, got a motion by Erica, a second by Rob. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Was that you, Ruth?
That was me.
We have one opposed. That motion, that passed. And Mr. Menaboo, I did not remember you at the beginning of the meeting, but you had some things to say.
I'm just going to welcome Ron back. It's you were gone for a little while, and you came back, and we lost Brian Hodges. He was a good member here, but he's moved on to bigger and better things. I guess state representative now, I think. So anyway.
And we've got a couple new board members back there, Mr. Eric.
Yeah.
And Greg, is it?
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yes.
Please come back to the next meeting.
Mr. Chair? I wanted to also say for those members who knew Jack Ratterman, we received word that he passed away.
Yeah.
So just wanted to acknowledge his service to the county and the time he put in with his civic duties.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Trina. All right. If there's nothing else, we say meeting adjourned. Yeah, we have them.
Didn't work, huh?
It's in our packet.
The opinions expressed by any member of the public during any period of public comment do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, or the program sponsor, and are solely those of the presenter. The Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, and the program sponsor hereby expressly disclaim any and all responsibility or liability for any defamatory or slanderous statements expressed by any member of the public during any such period.